is that tiled?
All the roof is tiled.
All the roof.
All the roof is tiled. I wanted to go
Looks
zinc,
like
but
sheeting.
apparently that would frighten the village to death.
Yeah.
So, and this is a key point for us, I think. It's apparently there is 2019 local plan and policy D2 paragraph 7.32 states the council is seeking innovation and high quality in both appearance and architectural style, and challenges architects, landowners and agents and developers to produce development that is not mundane, the pattern book standard and the visually jarring will be questioned. So we've tried to adhere to that, but without it standing out like an absolute sore thumb. So I thought it'd be relevant. This is the tile we intend to put on the roof.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. The colour of the tile is grey, as you will see, which is the colour of most tiles in our village because they're all 60 years old and they go this colour. It is not the colour which is currently on the roof.
What colour is it currently?
60 years ago it was brown.
Yeah.
Now, I'll show you. Come prepare.
Well done.
That wasn't the other one, so it's not that bad. So
I'm just wondering if it's in.
that is the colour of the roof at the moment with the tile
Okay.
next to it. Currently in discussion with Sedgemoor, who are looking for a brand new tile, either red or brown. My argument is it will stand out like an absolute sore thumb, whereas actually the grey is a lot more subtle. Cards on the table. If you say, I don't know what the wording you used for the motorhome place was. It goes through.
No observations.
No observations. If it goes through with no observations, it's going to be dismissed, thrown out, declined. It's going to be declined purely because we've agreed to the back box, purely because of the tile, roof tile. The planner is saying that it absolutely has to be the terracotta red.
Do you know why they're saying that?
They're saying because the village, predominantly the village, is one of those two colours.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. There are examples, countless examples along the spine of this village which have got these exact tiles. The the new estate at the end.
I've seen them down there.
Half of those is this. There are two houses on Burton Row.
I've got one that's got red tiles.
You've got
Red tiles.
yeah. I want nothing wrong with it. To me, it's just going to look.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, I showed you the colours of the other four. It's just going to sound like a sore thumb. Plus, we're trying to adhere to this, which is actually let's just challenge and all, but without being, like I say, I wanted, I quite like metal roofs and everything else like that. Luckily, my wife doesn't, and I'm sure the village wouldn't.
So you've actually heard from the planning officer that they would reject the application?
Amelia Elway is the planning officer who has said, is there if it's not committee, it's on her shoulders.
Yeah.
So even with all the evidence, all the photographs of the houses, she's actually staying rigid on this one. If you put in your notes, you feel that it is in accordance with this rule, then it will go to committee. My architect who's Graham Muir in Weston-super-Mare, has done work in the village, is absolutely floored by this. There is absolutely no issue with the height, there is no issue with the dormer, there is no issue with absolutely anything on it, other than potentially the colour of the roof.
Planning officer will deal with that, won't they? Yeah, I don't think that, Carl, I don't think that's something we get involved with. We can get involved with it insofar that we don't like the design, and we can often say we don't like the materials being used, but that's for the planning officer to decide, I think.
I think
we just need to look at it overall.
Yeah.
But just one question.
Yes.
Would be, you see this wall here, the lane is here.
Yes.
Is there a gap, David, between the path and the house, or is this the actual?
No, if you have a look at the front of the house, there is currently at the back of the house there is a garage.
Yeah.
The garage is being knocked down. Oh, sorry, and that is going to be a carport to the side of the house.
Oh, I see.
And that's going to be a brick wall, so
that's
the lane is fully protected.
So this won't be
That won't come
Won't
onto
come
the
onto the
lane.
lane.
No, it's the
You're
size of
over-
a car.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay, that's. So the important thing in this is this here will go straight across the back, and the conservatory will come down, and is this where your conservatory is at the moment, out here?
No,
There?
that's, yeah.
Okay, so the whole of the back comes out that far, and you'll just see rather large windows.
I can check the portal. Are there letters for and against? Any observations? Any just making comments?
There is one comment, the neighbours have written it.
Only, and said
What is that comment?
About drainage,
about drainage.
maybe, and, yeah.
It's all everything is valid, it's all things that obviously the architect has to be cognizant of when they're doing the plans. So I think in the past, before all the drainage was done, because our drainage goes underneath 99, there was a worry that it would have an impact on that, quite rightly, shade, and that's why it's not going out. We were planning originally to go out 6 metres, but like I say, it just makes sense to just keep it as it is.
Yeah, I sent it around.
And Wessex Water will say that rainwater running off the new driveways and roofs will require consideration to provide the best solution for the local environment. Rainwater may already connect to our existing foul or surface water networks. If you or your builder believe rainwater connects to the foul water network, this should be disconnected. An alternative method of disposal considered. Soakaways where possible.
Which are standard things which are all part of that.
Standard, maybe
It's not,
part of
yeah.
the condition.
I think one is shade and one's privacy, so it's all the things that you would expect.
I sent a scanned copy of the neighbours' comments about a couple of weeks ago, I think,
Okay.
which is there if anybody wants to view it.
Yeah. Would you like to?
Or send it
Two
to
copies. It's 2 copies. Okay. Anything else you want to tell us?
I mean, well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 villagers here. It'd be interesting to know what you all think, because what we don't want to do is put something up that everybody walks past the house goes, that sounds like a sore thumb. I mean, most of you won't see the back unless you dog walk into the field and walk back and jump over a 5-foot fence, but people do.
Well, my only observation is that the upstairs rather large windows seem a bit imposing, but it's not my development.
So what colour are they suggesting?
Either terracotta red or a terracotta colour,
Yeah.
or brown, which I don't, if I walked around a yard today to get those, brown tiles are, nobody uses brown tiles.
No.
Will weather down, terracotta
Yeah,
will
they
weather
do, yeah.
down.
They will, but probably just after I've died. I'm 53 in a fortnight. The one down there must be around number 40, which looks splendid, but they're as red now as they were when the roof went up, and I'm guessing that was about 10 years ago. The whole point is not to be too ostentatious, but to do something which actually...
I think
I suppose
that's your battle with the planning officer, to be honest with you. I think we've just got to view it as a planning application, whether it's suitable and fits in. Certainly you're raising the roof by 2 feet. How does that compare with next door?
There's the 4 bungalows, which were all built in 60.
Yeah.
2 at the 95 have already done it, 97 have already done it, 99 Sheila hasn't done it.
Okay.
Obviously we are doing it, and then obviously the other side of the lane is
It's big
huge
houses.
house.
Yeah. Okay. What do people feel about this? I mean, sorry.
Before you commented on the planning officer's concern about materials, I was concerned about materials, just for the roof, because I just felt that wasn't in keeping with the street scene of the properties, but I'm feel a bit at a loss because I haven't actually had a chance to view it. And you're saying from that picture it didn't look like it's out of keeping with what was there in terms of colour. But I don't recognise that as being the colour that was on the properties down Brent Street.
There are, but like I say, it's certainly not the majority, absolutely not.
Okay, that would just be my concern.
Doesn't
Sorry.
stand out that much. Because I'm between two houses that haven't got red tiles. I do know where my house is because I can see the tiles. But it doesn't sort of like hit you and you think, oh my God.
Yeah.
They're quite nice.
I must admit, I don't, until I've never done this before. I've always bought new houses. I've never done this before. To me, until I started to do this, I couldn't even tell you the colour of our roof.
No.
And I've had to scrape the moss off to get a better idea.
Yeah.
To me, it's the fact that every house really in Brent Knoll is different. There's a bright blue house, there's a pink house,
Okay.
there's a huge house.
All right. Let's cut this. Do I have a recommendation as to? It is property improvement. It's modernisation. It's creating a modern living environment in a village. Whatever happens to the tiles probably will be in keeping, although they'll probably look a bit modern. But that's a planner's matter. That's my assessment. I think we should support this on the basis that it's property improvement and modernising existing living accommodation, bettering it. That's my proposal. Do I have a seconder? Alina? All those? Are there any other proposals? Are there counter proposals? All those in favour? That's carried. Well done, thank you. That's it, Carl.
Can I go now?
And you can take the time.
Send Bob in, please. Nice to see you.
Likewise. Take care.
Bye. Activity reports. Footpaths. Am I doing footpaths?
Nothing to report, no.
Okay. There's only one thing that I noticed is on the path behind the church leading up to the first gate, the post and rail fence is bust,
Yeah.
which needs replacing. Probably looking at, but that's the only thing I've seen, noticed. Other than that, we seem to be okay, I think. Yeah.
So have you any thoughts about do we need to get a quote for that? If that needs fixing, we could get somebody to give us a quote to do it.
Well, Stephen Pinn,
Steve Pinn, you work
could
it
have a
out?
look at it. Yeah, was it? Is
Keep him
there a
busy.
problem with that?
No.
Will you do it? No. Do you know Stephen?
No.
Oh, right. Shall we get Stephen Pinn then? David? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. Thank you. Anything else on footpaths, Amanda? Are you okay?
You know, the only thing that I would mention on the fencing thing is, you know, the business around the reservoir where we had the hoo-ha with the hedge and that fence is in a poor state, and it will, the posts are wobbly and it is leaning the stakes in the wire, and at some point there probably will be a situation there where it's.
That's not for us to do that.
No.
No, I know, but I'll just sort of
It's,
mention it.
yeah, it's Adrian's.
It's
fence,
on the
isn't it?
lean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Well, yeah, if they don't clear the path, people are going to cross the fence and walk in the field, aren't they? So it's up to them. Yeah. Okay. Highways. Malcolm?
No, I have nothing to report on that.
Okay. Anybody else got any reports? Okay. Village Green toilet, who did that?
January was Sarah, and you were on the road, that's a bright, isn't it? You were on the road to for the Green and Melina is doing February one. I'm one thing I would just say, there was this incident that there was on, 2 weeks ago now. There was an incident on the green on, I think it was the 21st. We still don't know what the incident was actually. No one seems to know, although it was of an assault nature. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
But the police were very, very cagey on it. Having come to me on a Sunday evening about 10 o'clock and said, oh my goodness me, panic, we've got a situation on the green. And when I asked them to provide me more information, they said, well, no, under investigation. Can't talk about it. So that was it, really. So I don't know what it was. Do you know anything?
I don't know anything for certain. The only thing I would say is the police did make a comment to reassure the public that it was not a stranger assault.
Yes.
It was an assault between two people who knew each other.
Okay.
So it wasn't someone who just a random attack. It was something that happened between people who are known to each other. But
Could it be a domestic or whatever?
Just a punch up then.
And that was what's
So Rota, just no report this month, just put your report now.
I'm happy to do it in February.
Well, do you want to do it? Why don't you do it together?
Yeah, we can do it together.
Okay.
We'll do
Good
it
idea.
with
We'll do that.
holidays.
We get double dose report next month, don't we?
Bob,
can I just report two things for the Village Green? One is I was asked to move the little sign that's by the gate, so that's now on the fence that's nearer the green, so you can see it's not hidden behind the shop building anymore. So that's been done. And the other thing was just, I've had a couple of people report that there's been a couple of trips that people have had. As you exit the car park, there's a piece of grass to the right hand side near where the flagpole normally is. That has hollowed out, and so people have walked across it and tripped on the curbstones because it's quite a lot.
people have driven over it and made the hollow.
Exactly, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
But then people have fallen over it, so
Yeah.
it was just a request to us to fill it in, basically.
Is that a request?
Just check on it,
I
so.
don't think I've got any hardcore left. I used it on the last one. Yeah, I'm sure we can find some.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thanks, David. Anything else? No? Okie dokie. Play area?
The player report, well, we had the GB Sports report, of course, which you will have seen, and that didn't show up any new matters, apart from their concern over the roundabout. And Shawborn still have not been, in spite of the fact I've had assurances now 3 times from Simon Creswell, who's their principal. So I don't know where we go from there really, and I will raise it again. You did blame the weather last time, it was very wet. So we'll see what blame he comes up with. We've had 10 days of dry weather now, so we'll see what it comes up with.
Do you think that we should put, because obviously David and I put that temporary structure up, which the wind blows it over and people knock it out. If we put some wooden stakes in and fix, should we do something a bit more permanent just to keep people off it, or does it not matter?
They'll still throw it down. If they
You
want
think?
to.
It stayed up for a bit, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was just
But
when
then
it
it was
got
only
wet.
supposed to
and-
be very, very
Well,
temporary.
yeah, it was only meant to be there for, yeah.
Oh yeah, it was only going to be there for about a week, wasn't it? Okay, I'll get hold of Shawborn and say, there is a health and safety issue here, been raised by GB Sports
This is the repair on the
on the surface.
on the climbing frame and where the roundabout
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But
On the
if we
surface.
get a grant for that roundabout, then it's going to be disturbed anyway, isn't it?
It will be, but I suspect that's probably a fair way ahead. I don't see that being anything we're going to be doing perhaps immediately. So we've still got spring to go through.
Okay.
I guess we've got to do something with the health and safety wise. So
Okay. All right.
I'll keep pursuing it.
All right.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks.
Chairman, there's one question.
Yeah.
In terms of the GB report, they've highlighted a number of things like some of the metal bits wearing on some of the chains. Is it worth getting a quote from GB as to what their cost would be to actually just replace those and get them to a point where they're happy with them?
For
Yeah.
the chains, etc. Like, yes,
It's all a moderate risk things. We should do some of them because when they're classed as a moderate risk, they're still a risk, aren't they?
Yes, yeah,
Even if we do a couple
yeah,
this year,
yeah,
because they will become
just keep
severe.
it renewed, yeah.
And of course,
so-
the GB points out there's never a no risk.
No,
There's a
no.
low risk,
Yeah.
but there's never a no risk.
Okay. Yeah, good idea, David. Yeah, Bob, thank you. Okay. Does that deal with the play
Yeah,
area?
I think so.
Chairman, so it's customary for the chairman to write if you like, an annual report that's published in the BKN and then reported, goes forward to the AGM. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to draft one over next month and I'll get it to you if you could look at it in the next few weeks. And Bob, what date does it have to get to you by to go in the April BKN?
So with the April one, it'll be 15th of March.
15th of March, thank you. And then what date will our AGM be?
It's around about the 19th of April, actually. Actually, I think what date it is right this moment. It's around about the 19th. It's the third Wednesday of
Okay.
April.
Okay. So can you make a note of those for the AGM? That's an important meeting for you. Clerk's report.
Nothing really, other than I've
19th.
Look, sorry?
19th.
19th. I was right. We are. I'm hoping that the council will give approval to us hosting the next clerks forum. We have a local clerk group who did have a meeting here last September, and they enjoy coming here. This is a good room for them. And obviously the only situation as far as the council is concerned is obviously we have to agree to the cost of hiring the room for a couple of hours. And if we're happy to do that, then 7 or 8 local council clerks can meet up and hopefully share some ideas and good stuff that can be shared to the council and their council as well. So I just need really your permission just so that we can go ahead and host that clerks forum.
Yeah.
You're all happy with
Yes.
that?
All happy? Yes. Yeah. Very. Well done. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. On the next two, I don't think there's anything to report on the speed watch except this grant, if you remember, that we got from the Avon and Somerset Police Trust on this ANPR unit. It probably shouldn't be called that because it's caused a bit of a stir with Somerset County Council and the police authority. And I just summarise things. When Brent Knoll PC applied for a grant from the Road Safety Fund of the Police Community Trust for an ANPR, it did cause some confusion, but we also didn't want to hold you back on what happened to be good equipment to help bring down speeds in your area. We have worked with Westcotec previously and still do and like their educational approach to the use of their road safety devices. So it's, from what I gather, this is not a system, a process whereby people will be fined or issued with a summons. It will be just be an educational approach. So it's not a Big Brother system or process that we're seeking to introduce. The police are using it as an educational device. We've got to do some reapplying to make sure that our sites are properly approved by Somerset County Council. Unfortunately, I've lost that email I was going to read, told you I was going to read. Do you think you could find it?
Is this Aileen?
Yes.
Aileen Fletcher?
Yeah, Aileen Fletcher.
Yeah, I mean, Aileen Fletcher has said she was happy to come to the village and to meet up with council. She's also happy to join us for a meeting with Westcotec and the guy from the police. What's his name?
Tim, Trevor Simpson.
Yeah, because she'd like to know herself how this thing actually sort of fits into the general scheme of things. So it's up to us really to now to sort of line up a meeting with various parties to get the thing on the book.
In summary, we and Somerset County Council Highways are happy for you to deploy the device, but obviously we've got to go through the formal process. Yes?
Can I just ask, in terms of educational use, do you know how that application will be?
It'll just be a letter to you.
And that's the extent of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was at a meeting the other day at Brent Knoll Parish Council where they were talking about speed issues, and they had the PCC, the Police and Crime Commissioner, was there. He was talking about it, and he was sort of branding it almost as like an auto speed watch. So it's like the people out there with their gun doing the stuff in the village, but it's there 24/7, and it's so it can pick up things at times which they can't. So as Colin said, what would happen is they, in the same way that the speed watch, you get the letter saying you have been clocked, don't do it again. If you get clocked lots of times, it's the same vehicle, then they will start to come to an area because they know that's where something's happening. So, but there is no fine that follows it. It is just a warning letter to say you really shouldn't be doing that in that area.
Would somebody work with me on this? I'm happy to spearhead it with Tim Simpson and Aileen Fletcher, but there's a bit of work to do. But I think it's better that someone else gets involved with it, because I may not be around to, if you like, offer advice or keep it going. We can join with Stuart Nichols. Obviously he will deploy it, but you need to know what we have agreed with Somerset County Council. Sarah,
I'll be happy to.
will you?
Unless anyone else would like
That's
to.
very kind of you, thank you. Then I will keep you informed of what we do. And Bob?
Yeah, we're in, and also sort of wearing the county hat to some extent. Also, just to let you know, I'm part way around cataloguing the sites at the moment with these what 3-word things, and as soon as I've got that finished, because again, it's county have asked if we can, because in the past what we've said to them is, well, it's just down the road from number 23, in between, they want something that identifies it a bit more, so they've asked us to, so I'm basically getting the what 3 words and a photograph in both directions that we can then send to Aileen before she comes out and visits us.
So will you work with us on that as well? Okay. I just think it needs it, because you need to know how it's all structured. Okay, thank you. Thanks Sarah, thanks Bob. I think that leads us into Bob now.
Yeah, just a couple of updates from county. So the reorganisation is continuing. I think I mentioned at the last meeting we were in the process of the Tier 2 appointments. So in effect you've got the Chief Executive, and then underneath the Chief Exec there's going to be 7 assistant directors. They have now all been appointed. We're now in the process of the next tier, which is for their sort of assistants, who there will be 14 of, and they will be appointed. Primarily, people are being appointed from within the 5 councils. So in effect, people are able to apply for those posts. If they can't find anyone who's suitable, then they will be going out for advertisement beyond the council. But obviously, it makes sense to appoint from within rather than making people redundant and then getting someone in from outside. So that's proceeding. They're hoping the Tier 3 appointments will be in place by the end of March, which is the day that everything goes live on the 1st of April. So it's going to be a challenging time, I think, is the polite way of putting it, because obviously you can't get all the structures in place until you know who's actually making the teams. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes at the moment, but it is going to be very much a question of making sure that the new council is safe and legal on day one, and that you can still register a planning application or make sure your bins are being collected. But there will be an awful lot of stuff going on after that, trying to make everything come together. On the planning front, we had a constitution meeting on Monday, where the proposals for the new planning committees were tabled to members for the first time, and I think it would be fair to say they got a fairly good kicking, because basically you've got 5 different planning organisations all do stuff slightly differently. And so they brought together the various proposals, so that the proposal on the table at the moment is there will be 4 planning committees that will basically replicate the 4 districts, because obviously the 4 local plans are still in place. The proposal was that there would then be a strategic committee over the top of those 4, that in the case where any of those 4 made a decision against officer recommendation on a major application, that would have to be referred up to the strategic committee for them to confirm whether that decision was sound. That got a lot of issues raised as to, well, what's the point of having the lower tier committee if you're just going to, anything that's controversial, you're going to send up to the upper one. So that's being looked at again. You may have seen in the local press, there's been some coverage from the CPRE saying that the new system was anti-democratic and stopping people being able to say anything. In effect, what they were proposing was they were going to follow the Sedgemoor system, which is 1 for, 1 against parish ward members, whereas some of the other districts have unlimited numbers of speakers that can come and speak on any application. So those who've been used to that felt that was a major change, whereas Mendip and ourselves, that's what we've been doing anyway. So, as I say, it'd be fair to say there's lots of different views about how things should and shouldn't work. I mentioned to Owen earlier that one of the things on the table was that if parishes made a comment that resulted in the planning application going to committee, they would be compelled to send a representative to speak on that application. It wouldn't be a question of do you want to or not, it would be more or less, we won't take it to committee unless you are going to be there to say that's up for discussion as well, because that was felt, well, is that fair on some parishes that may not have people who can attend and you're stopping them raising an issue? So there's a fair amount of work yet to do, but we have to be up and running for the 1st of April. At Sedgemoor, we've actually made a decision that we've added an extra planning committee right at the end of March, so that at least we've got a bit of leeway that if it doesn't all kick off in the beginning of April, it's not going to be too much of a gap. But we'll see how that goes. On other things, we've got Dumble Roundabout, you may have seen.
Sorry,
Yeah,
is that right? 'Cause it's just
Absolutely,
two
sorry.
things. There's currently a 2-week delay on applications being processed. Is that as a result of this, or is that just because of flu and issues over Christmas?
As yet, it's not directly the result of this, but it is the result of the fact that obviously officers are not only having to do the day job, they're having to try and work out how they do the day after. In terms of decision times, there are delays at the moment, as you say, in registration. Hopefully that will ease a bit. One of the problems has also been that quite a few agents have put in quite a lot of applications because they wanted to get their application in before the change happens, because once it happens no one quite knows what happens next. So that's put a bit more pressure on the system, but ultimately they'll have to work their way through the system in the same way. If they're a delegated decision, it may not make that much difference to them, but if it's something that comes to committee, that could then put more of a delay in the process.
And you said that if the parish council was to make a decision that led it to go to committee, what would that be? To reject it in specific grounds?
So the proposal for delegation is to remain that if either the ward councillor or the parish in effect disagree with the recommendation of the officer on valid planning grounds, then that will trigger it to potentially go to committee. One of the other proposals that's on the table at the moment, which looks like it's going to happen, is at Sedgemoor that automatically takes it to committee at the moment. That's not the case in Taunton and West Somerset. So what happens there is the chairman of the committee, the person who's in the role that I'm currently sat in, gets to look at those applications that would be coming to committee and decide whether you think it warrants going to committee. So it's something that's been put forward at Sedgemoor previously. I've always refused it and said I don't want that responsibility, because ultimately I think it's a danger to put that sort of decision in one person's hands, because my view has always been if you want to try and bribe a decision that's going to committee at Sedgemoor, you've got to get to probably 8 councillors and make them all go the wrong way. That's going to be quite challenging. If you get to a point where there's one person who can suddenly trigger it to, oh no, it doesn't really need to go to committee, there's more of a danger in that, and it's less open. So, however, having said Sedgemoor's used to working with the way we do on the public speaking, that's the way that Taunton has worked for a number of years, and that seems to have been okay down there. So we're all going to have to get used to slightly different working practices. But we're all, I think it'd be fair to say, all the unitary members have been pushing for the fact that we don't want to see the parishes written out of the process, because there were suggestions at one time that parishes would still be a consultee, but it wouldn't have that trigger to send stuff to committee or even try and send it to committee. So that we at least seem to have gone beyond that. So there is still going to be a role, but it is going to put, if this other rule comes in about the speaking, it is going to put that much more pressure on potentially parishes that they have to be up for following up their views.
Okay, thank you.
A couple of roundabout issues. Dunbar, you may have seen, is now actually going to be going ahead and getting on with stuff, and also they have resolved the planning issues that were causing the problem at the development was right by Dunbar, so that's I think it's KFC and Greggs.
Yeah.
So that's now open and running, which for a while wasn't able to because they couldn't sort out the access. Junction 22, we've been having further discussions with both Sedgemoor and County, because at the moment Edithmead roundabout and the junction is not functioning properly, it's over capacity. There is the scheme that's coming forward as the major route network. You remember we had a presentation, must be a couple of years ago I guess, from the people who were looking at that then. That's still working its way through with government. We have not heard yet whether we've got the funding. There has been correspondence now with our local MP, who is putting some pressure on the government to get an answer one way or the other. But in the meantime, county and district are both putting funds aside for a sort of a plan B, that if we don't get the major road network changed, that we can at least do something to Edithmead roundabout to improve it to the point where at the moment it's actually putting a block on a number of both housing and industrial developments around the area, because they can't add anything more to the network until they improve that motorway junction. Other than that, I think that's probably it from me, other than on the roadworks front, we haven't had the detail of it yet, but the county, working with Devon and Cornwall and Hampshire, have had £5 million worth of government funding to look at greener ways to fill potholes. So they want to find out if there are ways that are less carbon intensive for improving the road surface without causing problems to the climate. So that's being looked at.
What's happened to Dorset then? You've got a bit of a gap there between
they're not on the list that I've been given. Cornwall, Hampshire, Devon, and us, but no Dorset. So. But yeah, so hopefully again they're looking at that on the environmental side to see if there are ways of doing road repair. Because in terms of the carbon footprint of the highways of the counties, the carbon, the footprint is really big on the highway maintenance. And if they can find a better way of doing it, that might make quite a big stretch towards their net zero.
They had something on the television from JCB. They invented this tractor that does the whole process. Didn't you see one? Yeah, interesting. My big two questions really. Who will we? What tier of person will we go to if we have any, or who will visit us, or who will be our if you like, pathway to Somerset?
So in terms of elected members, you're stuck with Tony and me. In terms of officers, generally you'd be looking, for most normal stuff, you'd be looking at tiers 4 and 5 officers, because the others are sort of senior managers. So
Right.
in effect, the role that is tier 2 is the sort of role that you'd have with the gentleman, Doug Bamsey, who's at Sedgemoor, it would be that sort of level at the moment. And Bob Brown, who's chief executive, would be tier 1.
Okay.
So they're the ultimate. If you don't get service, that's the ones you go to. But normally we will be operating, I would have thought, with the sort of tier 4s that we deal with at the moment. So which would be the sort of people like the Dawn de Vries is the head of planning, rather than the next tier up, which would be like Stuart Howlett, who we've had to do with planning and training.
So
He would be. Ian would probably be a tier 4, tier 5 officer.
Thank you. And the last question, I don't know if anybody, what are you going to do about the traffic that's going to go to the new Bristol airport when it's traffic's doubled?
Well, part of this major route network work was to look at that whole flow of Bristol Airport, and potentially if Bristol do get the go-ahead, then they're going to have to stump up a fair amount of funding to help improve those works on the A38. But again, I think it's going to another round of legal. They're going to appeal again, I think.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. They, from what I heard yesterday, they're saying that they're now taking it to the next level of legal appeal to see if they can get it overturned. But they've lost twice, so whether it makes any difference, but it just drags it out. And
Okay. No urgency. Thank you, Bob. That's brilliant. Thank you. Okay, let's go on to finance.
Okay, finance, well obviously we've got the statutory payments for, it says January, and that should mean February actually. Statutory payments for February, reference minute number 23821, when we agreed on the statutory payments for this year. So that's the first one. And the second one is the list of payments, which is a lengthy list this month. But 4 of them are matters that we approved last month. This is the grants to re-engage to the Brooklyn Judge Council, CAB and Parish Hall. And it's just really a question of resolution to approve those payments we've made. On the question of payments, John, are we okay now? Are you okay to authorise?
No.
You're still not in a position to authorise?
No letters arrived 3 weeks
Right, okay, so we're still stuck.
after 2 hours on
The length of time these people take to sort these things out. What about you, Amanda?
Well, I can log on to the,
You can log on?
I can log on,
So you
yeah.
could now authorise, could you?
I assume so, because I can log on and I can see all the
So that's fine,
accounts.
that's fine.
Yeah.
You should
I
be able
did
to
have
authorise.
to have 2 attempts though, because they sent me out a new password and it didn't work, so I rang them and they sent me another one.
Right.
But I can get on there now.
Okay, fair enough, because I'm waiting to add Tracy and Melina to it, but until I've got John and Amanda sorted out, I don't want to confuse them. I don't like confusion.
You know, I can certainly get onto the and I can see the account, so
Yeah,
immediately.
well, that, you must be able to
Try
authorise it.
with Bob
Try.
and Amanda then.
Yeah, try it and see where we get to.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm.
can I just check in terms of, because we're simply paying things that have already been agreed, things like the Legion, obviously those of us who are a member of the Legion, we don't need to declare it that
No,
part,
because
we're just
we decided last month,
fine.
it's just authorisation of payment. That's
Okay,
all.
thanks.
So you've got the four grants. We've got Paul Dixon has eventually come back with an invoice. It was a long time actually, but it goes back to work he did on the Village Green to do with the picnic table and notice board refurbishment, and the total of that comes to 257. Don't need to approve that. And the Legion wreath was another one that got a bit delayed because of difficulties with sort codes and account numbers and so forth, but we got there in the end. And also the donation to the bridle way, the jungle, known as the jungle, that should have been paid back in, I think it was October actually, but whenever I tried to set it up, the sort code didn't work, so I had to go back to Lincolnshire Parish Council and find out what was going on. They've now given me the correct information, so that can be paid. And the last one is the Decision Power website management fee for this year, £6.59, including VAT. Does seem to creep up a bit, this fee does seem to go up. You know, it was very consistent over a number of years, but it seems to be rising by quite a chunk now. You know, I still think Dave does a really good job. And
That one doesn't appear.
That
to be on the
doesn't appear.
agenda.
oh right, I'm the only one that's got it. Am I the only one that's got it?
Yeah, it's not,
Okay.
it's not on.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, it's a matter for you. I mean, obviously you can defer it to the next meeting if you wish.
No,
Well, you
let's, can we approve that rather than delay it?
Yeah.
How much is that?
That's
625?
659,
659.
including VAT, which is obviously reclaimable. So there's about 100 and something coming back.
Okay. Can I propose then that we pay the February statutory payments and those payments that are detailed in 6B plus the decision power £659. Secondly, David, everybody's happy with that.
That's fine. Thank you.
And we'll try Amanda and Bob.
Yeah.
Just
Try and see how we get on.
Just do it.
I'll set the payments up tomorrow probably, so I'll let you know.
Yeah,
All right.
that's fine.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Next one is the contracts, which we need to approve for the forthcoming year, which is 2023-24. I listed them down so that we could identify what were the contracts. Actually, some of them are not actually contracts, they're just decisions that are taken at this time of the year. So internal auditor Richard Young, so he assesses our accounts before he goes to the external auditor. The village contractor JP Mayo, he's come back to me and confirmed there will be no changes to his fees. So Jason will be exactly the same for next year as he is for this year. So unless there's any additions to that, you know. Toilet block and now, this is an interesting one, toilet and dog bin contract. The toilet block, of course, may change as a result of things happening with the shop. But also, the unitary authority might have some different views about what they're going to charge us for toilet contract. And we may have to go back and have another look at it with another alternative if we don't like some of the numbers they come out with. So that one's very much an interim contract, it's not an absolute sort of tablet of stone. And the same with dog bins. I don't know really, has anything happened there on that? I mean, it's one of those things when you ask the question, they just simply say, no idea.
I think the proposal at the moment is because, as I say, they're trying to get safe and legal to start with. For the first few months, and probably the first year, most of the things will carry on as they were.
Yeah.
They were highlighting the other day that even down to things like there's grass cutting contracts that all 4 districts do differently. I think it was 3 of the 4 do it on a how many times per year basis, and one of them did it on the grass must be longer than 2.5 centimetres. And I'm thinking, who goes around with the yes, so
We'll start that.
yeah, so
Weekly grass.
Okay, all right, well, we'll just have to play that one by ear. Play inspection GB Sports, that hasn't changed. It went up early last year. Payroll provider, the new unitary authority has decided they're not going to take that over from Sedgemoor. So I've sought a new provider for that. It's a company called Patter, and that's Patter is an organisation that are partly charity, but they also run very good services for local authorities. They're based in Gloucester, and their fees are more or less what Sedgemoor were, probably about £10 a year difference. And so they are used by a number of parish councils in the area. So I'm suggesting that we place that contract with them. I have looked at a few others, but to be honest with you, some of them are horrendously expensive, and they're a long way away as well. Sort of place like Scotland and places like that. I didn't particularly think it was a good idea. So Patter are a Gloucester-based company, so that's what I'm recommending anyway. And then insurer, Gallagher Insurance, we're 2 years into a 3-year contract with them, so there's no way we can change that anyway. But I just put it there just in case anybody had any other thoughts. So I just need a resolution to approve. Or any questions on any of those items?
Proposer, David, proposes we accept them. Seconded Melina, all those in favour? That's great, thank you. Did we issue an order to Stephen Pinn to do his strimming?
His contract, yeah. I mean, I've asked Stephen to come back with a sort of format.
Oh, okay.
And we'll add that to the list once he comes back. Okay.
Right, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, he'll be added.
Updated matters, weight restriction ongoing, really?
Bob, nothing?
Yeah. Anything on the 20 mile an hour?
No.
No? Okay.
Apart from signs.
Yeah, got the signs. Yeah. Okay, correspondence?
Nothing other than that you've already seen.
Okay. Matters of decision by the council. A, community shop.
Well, basically the things have moved a little bit, hopefully. Sarah and I went to a meeting with the shop management committee with our respective solicitors on Friday. And I think it was a generally good-natured meeting, wasn't it, Sarah? I think they were fairly accommodating in most respects. But obviously as a result of that, we need to come to the council to propose the kinds of parameters that we've set in place. Do you want to
Yeah.
highlight, Sarah?
Um,
Sure,
First thing
leave
I
that to
wanted
us.
to say is I did ask Charles for a client care letter, which he felt able to provide to us at this point, now that he was clear on the remit of the brief. Would you send that to you?
Yeah,
He did
you
say
would,
that.
you would send me
I
just
actually sent it to us
a
before
fee
this
tariff.
meeting.
Yeah,
That basically was set at his hourly rate and also his estimated
yeah,
sort of calculation of how many hours it's going to take and what the ultimate cost would be. And I think that's important that we resolve to agree that figure. I'm assuming you've not received anything.
sorry, no.
No, okay, all right, then I perhaps chase Charles up tomorrow for that.
You live about a slow side of time, Charles. You have to keep nagging.
I just think if we're going to
I'm
start
nagging.
moving things forward, I think we need to have
Mm.
an idea of what those costs might look like.
Because that will need to be approved, you know, by the council.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's something that should get sent out as soon as instructed from day one, so
Yeah.
I think we have that. So Ellie and I had a meeting, it was after a meeting between Nina, Colin and I, just to sort of set the principles of what we were looking to achieve in the negotiation. And following that meeting, we were able to propose a structure to the lease between the council and the shop. So just going through perhaps the salient provisions of what that lease might look like. The principles really were about considering the shop as the success of the shop is ultimately the success of the council and the village. We want it to work, so we want to be flexible, but also we have to be accountable to villagers in terms of agreeing costs, agreeing controls in the lease, etc. So we had to balance that, I think, in our proposals to the shop. So I think there's just probably 4 or 5 heads of terms that really were quite important to us. One of them is term, obviously the rent and how the mechanics of the rent work throughout the term of the lease. The ability to alter the premises, the ability to transfer any interest in the premises, and also the use to which the premises were put and core opening hours. So I think they were the main points that we were bringing together. So I just run through what we agreed fairly succinctly, so that we can agree or otherwise and consider what we think. So the term, obviously the loan is for 25 years, and that's the commitment of the parish council. So the starting point possibly is to have a 25-year lease. Market norm is definitely not 25 years. That was many years ago that we entered into a lease for that length of term. And these days it could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. And I think what we want to ensure is that the shop has a successful run, or has a run at trading and a chance to become successful and profitable and return that money back into the village. So we want to ensure that they have a long enough period of time to trade, but at the same time that we don't tie the hands of subsequent council members in terms of negotiating terms and bring it back to the market and checking that it is on terms that we want it to be. So the proposal was 10 years. The mechanics of that is such that the contractual term would be 10 years between the parties, but the tenant has the automatic right at the end of 10 years to come back and request, they're not obligated to, but to request a further term, which is normally similar to the term that they had originally, and it's normally on similar terms to the original terms, but the parties can negotiate. It also reverts to open market value rental at that point. But again, the parties will just agree between them. And if it's a rent that the shop simply can't absorb, then they will walk away. But it allows the parties to come back at that point and to reset the process and renegotiate the terms. So I think we felt between ourselves that that was a sensible proposal. It was one that was accepted, I believe, by the shop. But obviously that's one just to consider at this point. We're happy with that. The rent, Owen might speak about in a minute, but the mechanics of the rent, where we felt that in the first 5 years, the starting rent should be one that where the shop can absorb and can pay, and they will have set-up costs and fit-out costs, etc. But we felt that it would be sensible to align the rent each year to RPI, so it'd be increased, actually it was 10%, wasn't it? It was a 10% increase, to keep it in real terms the same value over the first 5 years of the term. and at the 5th year, that there would be an open market rent review. There would be certain assumptions and disregards, without getting into too much detail, put into the lease that would enable the parties to again basically reset it, that it wouldn't necessarily be open market, it would probably be favourable to the shop and continue to be favourable to the shop at that time, but the starting point definitely is open market. And at the 10th year, you then renegotiate again. So that's the mechanics for rent. We then wanted to ensure any alterations. When the shop commits their fit out at day one, we will review the plans and we will approve the plans for the fit out. It's normal market practice that the tenant would come to his landlord and request approval for any internal alterations they wish to undertake during the term of the lease. But we have that reasonably, and that's market norm. So it's a qualified right to alter, which requires that the shop will come to us, can be in a simple letter form, and that we have the right to review any alterations that they propose to undertake to the interior of the unit. Any external alterations, again, it's more market norm that they are absolutely prohibited. And I think it's really important as a village shop that we are able to, and it's our asset, we are able to have a control over the aesthetics of what the building will look like. So if they come to us, it might be that they want an awning, they want, I think there was certain maybe signage that we want to review, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there was that, and there was also outside, use of outside space as well,
Yeah,
for other
outside
events
space.
came up.
Yeah, so I think we proposed that there was an absolute prohibition against any alterations to the exterior, but that they could come to us, and I think in reality it would just be a sensible conversation had at the time, and the councillors would consider it on reasonable terms, but it's just not something they're entitled to have in terms of the lease. The next point was they're taking the lease for 10 years. Normally a tenant would want the ability to transfer its interest in the lease during that period. I think because of the unique nature of this transaction, that the proposal was that they couldn't transfer it. They couldn't subsequently look to transfer it to Sainsbury's, to look to transfer it to another big retail company or a small retail company, because it's quite a unique proposition here for the community at large. So the request from our side was that they couldn't assign it, that it was for the 10-year term. They have the break at 5th year if they want to get out, and that they cannot assign it. And I think they accepted that, didn't they? They did ask for a rolling break to ensure that they had flexibility. My recommendation is we absolutely don't accept a rolling break, because I don't think it shows a commitment potentially on their part, although I think the commitment is there. But we would not want them to break the lease at will, because we've got a 25-year commitment sitting behind what we're trying to do. So I think the consensus was the 5th-year break was sufficient, but they may come back and request something else if they can't assign it or transfer their interest in the term. So that might be something that might change. And then the other point that was raised was core opening hours, and there was a proposition that they open for a number of hours each day over a particular period of time, perhaps 6 days a week. They didn't seem to be too happy at that request, and I think for obvious operational grounds, that they work with volunteers, so their intention is to trade as many hours as they can, but they wouldn't want to be tied into any commitment to certain hours. So I think the compromise on that was that there was a reasonable endeavours obligation by the shop to open for a number of hours or to provide a service to the community. I can't remember quite how I don't think we were going to be prescriptive about the hours.
One of the things was it's not legally enforceable, is it? That's the problem. Even if we set
it does give you
opening
leverage.
hours.
Yeah, it does give you leverage. It's not legally enforceable, but you'd certainly, if they weren't acting reasonably in terms of their operating hours, then you would have the ability to go and put a little bit of pressure on them.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to get the whip out and tell them, you're going to take the lease away or something.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, but you'd certainly have some leverage. And I think it's a fair compromise given their operational restrictions. So they're the sort of same provisions that we've agreed at this stage. As soon as we get some documents, I'm happy to look through it and just come back to the council with any other provisions that I think might be of interest or concern. But I think generally speaking, there was a general consensus that the framework we proposed was acceptable. The only point that perhaps is worthy of further